And I like that you've touched on pricing. Exposure, being paid in exposure. Yeah. So majority of creatives, especially at home here in Zambia, have the feeling of, no, but why should I do it for free? Will I eat exposure? I literally saw a video today of a guy literally making a meal out of thin air, just like, this is how I spend the money I'm paid out of exposure.
This is, yes.
So, at what point is it right for you to do free work? And when do you stop to say, okay, I've built this bond or this relationship with the client to a point where I can charge?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, number one, it comes back down to a brand. First of all, if you are doing it for exposure, you need to have a solid brand that is already somewhat exposed, but you can't be exposed. No, I'm sorry, but you can't. You can't. Build a brand. If you've got a strong enough brand, then yes, you're able to align yourself with another brand. But even that, you have to deliberately have a strategy of where the end goal is. I'll give you an example. If I did some free stuff for the Lusaka Golf Club. I used to play golf myself, so I was quite familiar with the setup of these tournaments, and so we designed the booklet for the I think that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. There was the Zambia Open golf tournament. Now that's an international golf tournament. We're not looking to impress the international guys that came in. Our whole focus, again, understanding who your market was. Our core focus was getting through to the CEOs. Now, the strategy had to be different because we had to realize the guys that play golf are the directors, the board chair people. So those guys are not marketing people. It's very different when we place an ad as an advertising agency to attract work to us in a magazine, because that's seen by everybody. But because we are very, very specific, we had to change the language to meet the sort of language and the things that these MDs are actually interested in, and we went with a simple piece of, we got a full page space, and then we put an image of a tropical beach with a nice, very expensive boat. It had nothing to do with advertising, and we just said, look, we can get you there, call us. End of story, and I think that photo was, we jacked the photo from the internet. I think it was of Malaysia or someplace like that. And so there was just curiosity, like, what do you mean you get me? Say, is this a travel agency? Are you, But then that's how we started the conversations, and we were able to we got about 4 jobs out of that gig, but it was stimulating interest. So anyway, exposure. If you've got a plan, yes, but exposure in itself, it doesn't have value. I mean, unless the value that you get from exposure is basically you understanding who you're going to speak to and getting a real sense of why they would even respond to you, But I can't say I'm going to do a free brochure for Jehovah's Witness. Sorry, I hope I don't. But you see what I'm trying to say, where I'm trying to go here, you know what I mean? The exposure has to be quantifiable. It has to be quantifiable. Even if you were to say to me, right, here's Nkwazi magazine, it's a great magazine, it goes out, it's in flight. If I don't have a plan on how I'm going to make that exposure make me money, it's not valuable to me. It's not valuable to me. But I think as creatives, and it gets quite dry sometimes. We all know that, both financially and even intellectually. Sometimes there's no idea, just dry. But from a financial standpoint, I feel that, if you don't stand for anything, you're bound to fall for anything. You're bound to fall for exposure. So I think one has to basically come down to the point where, it's very interesting. You ask any business consultant, what are you worth? They can break it down for you. They can break it down and say, my hourly rate is 200 kwacha, therefore my day rate is this, my monthly rate is that. So even if you were to hire this person, they would know exactly what their salary would actually work out to. Ask any creative what they are worth. Exposure. So until we get to that point where we can actually, and it's an easy approach. Now, one of the things, when we're talking about costing, one of the things that comes into play is when you are working on a piece of artwork, for example, how long does it take you to get inspiration? And one of the biggest debates has been whether the client should pay for that or not. So, for example, one would say, right, okay, and it does happen sometimes, you know, you get a brief today and tomorrow, bam, you've got this brilliant idea, you execute it, you're done. But then sometimes you just struggle. You don't know where to start. You design it, then you redesign it, then you cancel it. I mean, you look at the particular photo on the computer, it probably has like 6, 7, 8 versions of the same artwork until you get to a point where you're comfortable. Now, the underlying question there has been, should the client pay for your lack of inspiration, or should the client pay basically for the time and the effort that you're putting in to make sure you get it right? Right? And then it boils down to that, because you've already agreed a fixed fee. The client says, again, this whole fixed fee thing, you put yourself in a box. You know, how much is this artwork or this advert going to cost? It's going to cost 10,000 kwacha. And then you've calculated that you might be able to do it within a week. You end up doing it in 3 months. You're still only going to get the 10,000 kwacha. It's not going to go any higher than that. And so you start to either, you've got a choice there. You've got a choice to either cut it and compromise on your own quality, give them whatever it is, because chances are you've already finished like a down payment on a weekend out, and now you want like a balance. You know what I'm trying to say? Oh, we've been there. Look, I mean, that's the way it is. Yes, the struggle is real, right? That's true. So you then compromise, and that's basically where you start to build your brand. It all sort of, I don't know if you're seeing a pattern that how all of these are sort of interlinked. Yeah. You know, what you stand for, your brand, and then the revenue and how much you charge for it. You know, I remember that we had been working on, the first time I approached this concept of having the Creative Council, the idea was that you would have 3 groupings of any particular skill set. So designers or videographers or animators or script writers, you'd have entry-level, mid-level, and high-level. And we were going to give or package them in brackets in terms of remuneration, hourly rates. Yeah. You know, so they would have that, and you know, and so the thinking there now was like, first of all, you have to find a way of determining who is an entry level and who is, because everybody's an expert, right? Yes, yeah, you know, advertising sadly is like sex. Everybody thinks they're very good at it and they're experts. So it's just there's no telling, you know, who is really where in terms of stacking order. But I think ultimately there is one proof that one can actually take out of there, and it's your billings. You know, how much are you billing the client? But then a lot of that can also come from you just undercharging for your services. But I don't think there's ever been anything like overcharging for creative work. There's no such thing. I think, you know, the higher you go basically means the more appreciating a client is and the more connected your work is to solving their problem. So when you look at it from that perspective, you can probably start to think about costing a bit differently.
Yeah, very true, very true. I love that. And second one out before I open it up to
sure.
these guys. You talked of how you leaped into Zamfest at that particular period in time. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this whole idea of experiential marketing? You know, it's no longer just about, oh, we sell milk.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What is it around the brand, around the milk? Like, for example, Zamfest, you know, it's prize, it's music, it's
sure.
culture.
Sure.
So are we seeing advertising going more that way, or should I say creativity going more that way in regards to brands? Or it will always be about, oh, these guys sell milk.
Yeah.
Their milk is better than these guys.
Sure.
So buy their milk.
Sure. So we're definitely seeing a shift. And it's not just in the local industry here. I think it's global. But speaking from a Zambian perspective, I think we're suddenly, and thank God for this, we suddenly realize that, you know what, getting people to do twerking in shopping malls doesn't do it anymore. Huh? No. Like you can't just bring a truck or there's whatever music in the car park and then you start twerking and saying people are going to buy milk. No. We're starting to realize. We're starting to wake up to the fact that that's not an activation. You know, in fact, there's such noise making which should probably be illegal in some places. You know what I'm trying to say? So now we're looking experiential. The word is experiential, right? Because for the longest time, advertising has been, you know, I like the milk example, so I'm going to stick with that. Yeah. This is our milk. It's great milk. It tastes good. It's not like any other milks. Yeah. This one is very special milk. You should try it. So we changed that messaging to, here's our milk. We're not going to say anything. Here's a glass. Experiential. Experience it. So what Zamfest was about basically was about setting up this platform where brands can put themselves out there and basically sort of, give the client a first-hand experience. There's nothing that's going to be stronger than an individual endorsement. You know, if I'm sold and I just think like, look, you know what, Fanta grape is what I take, and I'm proud of it. That's my drink. I'm going to try and convince you because it's a human thing.
Yeah.
If I enjoy something, and you're my friend, I'm going to try and share that with you so you can enjoy it too, you know, and you pass that on. I'll either always have it in my car or whatever it is, but I will recommend it. That's been the same thing with apples now. These days, you know, you are creative purely by owning an iMac. You know, I mean, you get one of those and you're this guy, yeah, no, exactly. You know, you might not even know how to turn it on, but you are going, yes. You know, Dell Pentium 4, whatever, however, it's not quite cutting it. Exactly. You know, you can't have anything else. I've seen people stick on the Apple logo signs on your normal PCs. I have seen that. I have seen a tower, and this was a tower, you know, those box towers, spray painted white, the little Apple symbol, you know. But you see, the association has been so strong. Because the association then is that, you know, everybody in the creative industry sort of uses that. But it's the experience at the end of the day that I think for any creative who's worked on that, the user interface and that's what I will say to you if you're asking me about which machine you should buy. So in the same way, we're now seeing brands actually realizing that people have to have an experience. This year we had Zamfest over at Nkwashe, and see the alignment between Zamfest and Nkwashe was that Nkwashe is offering this lifestyle. They're selling real estate in this beautiful part of town. You know, the hills, the river, the dam. It's great. And so for them, it was very much aligned with what they were doing because we were going to draw people into that space to experience. You know, it's called Nkwashe because of the eagle, and for sure you hear the eagles, you know, making noises in the background there. The sunset there is spectacular. Even just the drive there feels like it's a little bit of a holiday. So the experiential route, especially for retail brands, is a strong push. But I think it's still being, number one, underused, and number two, it's not been fully exploited in terms of what we can do in terms of pushing those boundaries. Because I think in terms of giving somebody an experience or a look and feel that they can take away, it's more than it's just, you know, here's a T-shirt, wear this T-shirt of this brand. Chances are I'll probably pass it on to somebody, and you know. Well, there you go. Yeah. Yes. So there's a lot of that. But if I have an experience and I feel something, because remember, a lot of our decisions, over 90% of human decisions are emotional. True. You know, how do you get an emotion to me? So for example, we do get these briefs and like, say for example, an ISP, you know, how do you create an emotional connection with an ISP? Yeah. How do you differentiate? Say, for example, I don't want to mention any brands, but say there's an internet service provider called Red. Yeah. How do you get Red to have an emotional connection with me? So there's things that I'm emotional about, for example, you know, might be my kids or cars or building cars or whatever it is. But if you're then able to connect that ISP to an emotional side of me by telling me that I'm going to be able to watch how to, because that's what we all do, right? You said it yourself in the beginning. Yeah. You know, I mean, fix a car, right? Google, YouTube, or when I'm watch a gearbox, then off you go, right? So if you're then able to tell me that I'm going to be able to watch that seamlessly and effortlessly without buffering or anything, suddenly that's connected to an emotional part. But then I'm only going to basically have that feeling held within me by testing it out. So if I go somewhere and I find, right, you're an ISP, you've set up these, give me like a free sample. If I can try it for like 3 days and think this is super fast internet, you've got me. You've got me, but it's because I've experienced it. So because of that, you can have a cheetah on a billboard and you say the internet is as fast as a cheetah, which is a wild animal out in the bush there, and you confuse me, I won't buy it. No, I'm sorry, but you know, unless you give me an emotional connection, I'm not fond of cheetahs, quite frankly enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're nice animals, I'm sure, you know, but yeah, I'm just not, you know, I won't have it as a pet. Let's just put it that way. You know what I'm saying? So unless it has to be connections. Brands need to have personalities, and just the way as human beings we connect, brands need to get to a human level where they can form human connections with their target market. That's the only way that we're going to start seeing a difference in how we grow these brands.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking to Experiential, actually, I saw something that I really liked. It was a cell phone brand. They were selling the newest version of their cell phone, and they had this booth in the middle of town, and people had to go in to say who can take the largest selfie with the most people cramped in the booth. So you had people literally trying to fit their friends,
exactly.
Yeah.
And you see, you're going to walk away from that with that beautiful moment. We were there trying to do this, and you were connected with friends.
Yeah.
So the next time you see that brand, it's going to stir up that emotion, that feel-good factor. You know, it's like I don't know what happened with me. Also, I mean, when I see a bottle of Mossy, someone just gets happy. It takes me to the happy place. It takes me to the put respect on it. Yeah, exactly. Happy place. Yeah.
Definitely. I don't want to steal too much of your time, so I'll open it up to questions. You guys must have questions. But if you leave me, I'll keep going. Questions? So I can continue asking on your behalf.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Zion.
Nice to meet you, Zion. Zion?
Yes.
Yeah, Zion. Right.
My question is, how do you handle, have you ever had bad feedback from a client?
Oh yeah, that was my middle name at some point. Bad feedback.
How did you handle it?
It's tough. I mean, quite frankly, I've had some clients that tell me, you know what, you've wasted our time. This is absolute rubbish, and you know we don't want to hear. I've had it all. I mean, trust me, it's never an easy journey. There are two things there as a creative that you need to take into consideration. Number one, you need to be able to separate your work from you as an individual. And I used to be scared to go and pitch, because a lot of times the pitching process I associated with myself. The fundamental thing is to understand that you're selling an idea, you know, and therefore them rejecting the idea is not the same as them rejecting you. We've had some pitches where we've been torn apart so badly in that pitch that we were groups of 4 or 5 maybe. You're driving back to the office and the car is quiet. Like nobody is talking. Everybody's just sort of trying to process. And we deal with these in different ways. But I think for me, the important thing is to take away the lesson. You know, to take away the lesson. My wife and I have this thing we call school fees. So for example, if we lose money on a deal or we spend a lot of money on a particular pitch building it and you go and pitch it and it doesn't go through, you call it school fees because you learn a lot more from where you failed. The issue usually is when either your pride or your sense of worth is threatened. That we then shut down mentally, and we forget that actually they're saying no to the idea and not no to you as an individual. You know, I have had to avoid people who have turned me down in meetings just because of the embarrassment. I mean, you see them coming down that way, you you take a turn. But as you go along, you realize that actually they're rejecting the idea, and usually people reject the idea for 2 reasons. Number one, they don't actually understand it. And most often times, that's the case. And in which, when you look at it that way, it means you haven't explained it well enough for them to get it. You know, the other reason is sometimes just very bad timing, you know, or not understanding the brief properly. You know, there were times when we would get a brief and, you know, you sort of just skim through it, but because you're so excited to jump into it, you literally just go with the idea that you had in the first place. A lot of that, for example, I'll tell you one embarrassing pitch we did. We sent this 5-page brief. You know, and like I said at the beginning, I didn't do very well, in school. So reading is, I read to sort of just get the gist of it and not the detail. And we were asked to do this pitch for a campaign that we would run. And we hadn't read the brief all the way through. We were just so excited because we had all these ideas, and we crafted what I felt was a really great pitch. And we were going to do this social media campaign that was going to tie into the stores and everything else. And it was only in that meeting with the whole executive team, you know, from the MD to, and this is a big bank, and the MD, the whole team, yes. And it turns out that actually the brief they had wanted was for us to find ways of communicating this to the rural areas. So a Facebook campaign was not going to dwell or gel very well with that particular demographic. Not to mention that we'd actually also like completely missed what the intricacies of the product were. So again, that's an example of how you can get it completely wrong, you know, in terms of the client is going this way and you go the other way. But all of those were school fees, as we said, you know, lessons. But I think the best way is to try and ask us a lot of questions. When the client sort of rejects the pitch, find out a bit more, because that's what's going to help you craft a better pitch next time. Lupali, how are you doing?
Questions, questions. Sure.
This is going to be a tough one.
How do you make the client see your worth? I think it's a very tricky area. So for example, like designing a logo. You know, some people can do it in seconds. Some people can take 3 months. Some people can take a year to design a logo. And I think it all comes down to experience. But how do you make a client see your worth? Because I wouldn't want to charge an hourly rate for a logo, which I think is what we usually do as creatives. Like, my hourly rate is this. But I can tell you now, because I've had over 10 years of experience, I can do a logo in 20 minutes. And it'll be a logo that will be accepted because of the experience I have. I can sort of think ahead to what a client needs and what their brand is, because I've got that experience. I know what they're looking for, who their demographic is, so what the look and feel is. I can do it in 20 minutes. But then in 20 minutes, that's less than my hourly rate. And if my hourly rate is 500 kwacha, I'm getting paid 500 kwacha to design a logo. You know what? So it's, how do you not punish yourself? Because that is essentially punishing yourself. So you've designed this logo in 20 minutes. You're getting paid 500 kwacha. But this logo, you know, like the Nike brand, this is...
Somebody just went like,
exactly.
done.
A logo t-shirt is 20 kwacha with the Nike brand, you know, it's 200 kwacha. So it's that. Knowing that a logo can, you know, can grow into like a huge thing. How do you then make a client see that you deserve 50 pin for a logo and not 500 kwacha because you can do it in 20 minutes?
It reminds me of this story of this old man who worked on an oil rig. You know those oil rigs that are out there at the sea, and they had this boiler. Now, there's this big setup and there were lots of machines, but then they were all propelled by the steam from a boiler. And he had been there for years and years and years. And this new MD came in and said, we need new blood, we need younger people, blah, blah. But that guy had been there for ages, and he had really understood how this whole thing works. And so they cut him, you know, they fired him, and he went, and soon enough, 3, 4, 5 months down the line, the boiler broke. You know, they called the best of engineers that tried to look at it, and they couldn't sort it out. It was too expensive to buy a new one. So, you know, eventually they called for the old guy. And he came and he says, right, okay, I can fix that problem, but I'm going to charge you $1 million. $1 million. And they're like, you know, okay, so we'll come back to you. But eventually they got back to there. And then when he came, he literally picked up a hammer and hit it once, and off it was. And they said, look, here's the bill. Basically, the labor is going to be like $1, and the rest is for knowing where to. So it's very much the same thing. It's the value that the guy brought. Now, with a lot of this, when you talk about logo, for example, I think we need to step away from logos. We need to look at building brand, you know, brand identities. You know, because when you're looking at a logo, you're basically looking at such a small part of what the overall business is going to be. And yeah, I know these things differ. Sometimes it's me and I've got a Kantemba and I just want a logo for the Kantemba. But even with that, there should be an opportunity there to say, right, this logo has to sit on a white background. So therefore, already you're stepping in the territory where you're talking about the overall look and feel of the Kantemba. As creatives, we need to find a way to start justifying our work. We need to start telling stories ourselves. And I am a firm believer in the fact that we need to educate our clients to understand what we are doing. You know, because half the time they are looking at the finished product and have no context of the process behind that. You know, there are companies that I have dealt with or collaborated with who have invoiced. I remember there was this great F&B ad, and it was done by a South African company. Their quotation for a TV advert was 7 pages long. Like, they listed every single detail, you know. The pen that was used to write that was probably even on that line item. But they detailed everything. So that's another approach to get somebody to understand the depth of work. But, for example, if somebody says to you, look, I want you to design me a logo, and how much is that going to cost? You know, it's up to the creatives to actually start saying, look, first of all, your logo is just one element. What I'm going to design you, I'm going to basically create a brand identity for you. It's not just a logo. What we're going to do is that we're going to create a look and feel. We're going to create a character. Yeah, your company, just like a human being, your company has to have a character. It has to have an identity. It has to have something that differentiates it from what's already there, because I can't give you a logo that's already been done. This is a bespoke logo. It's going to take me an amount of time for me to understand who you're trying to reach. And it starts to add value. You start to add value the moment you start questioning them. The moment they start to think about certain elements about that business that they didn't even initially think about, that's when you create that value. So then you're basically painting a picture to them to say, I've got to factor in all of these things before I can even create that logo. A lot of this happens almost at a subconscious level, you know. You sort of get there and you sit on your desk and you already start designing it, but the honest truth is that your mind has processed the fact that, well, you know, it can't be that. It has to be this. So, for example, I would say to you, if somebody comes to me and says, well, I'm opening a fast food chain and I want to set up a logo, it's up to me to start and understand I can't look KFC logo, it can't look like the Nando's logo. All of this go through in the background, but because they're not brought to the foreground, the client most often doesn't fully understand the amount of work that goes into it, you know. So in much the same way, the difference between the 500 kwacha logo and a 5,000 kwacha brand manual is literally the research. Being able to prove that you've actually gone out of your way to understand what's in the market and how you're going to differentiate it and how you're going to position it for growth, that makes a huge difference, because that stops being a logo that's just used for this business. It becomes part of that business plan. You understand? Because the identity and the look and feel has to then be in sync with the activities of the business. And so therefore, you actually help illuminate their business plan and how they're going to position themselves. So they would be basically getting away with a whole lot. And they normally wouldn't tell you this, but the moment you give them that logo, then they're off to give somebody else a job. And they'll say, I already have my logo, you just do me the business cards. I already have the logo, you just give me the t-shirts, precisely. But if that's an opportunity that you have, your full brand manual would have all of that. You know, it starts with saying, my usual line is, right, you want a logo. How long do you think your business is going to last? I'm willing to think that your business will probably be out of business in a month. And then they're going to turn around and start defending that, right? Yeah. So you're like, right, okay, so you are looking at a long-term business that has to survive 5 years. Okay, well, by the time you're doing 1 year, you're going to need t-shirts, you're going to need business cards, you're going to need a website. I'll create a template that means that you never have to go to a designer again until much later on when you decide to rebrand. So it's all in the storytelling. It's all in the narration. It's all in how, you know, you show what you can bring to the table. And the template usually helps. I mean, I wouldn't be against the very listed approach either, you know?
7 pages.
7 pages. But obviously you want to make, it has to be worthwhile. Because I mean, I do say this, and this was a South African company doing it, and it was quite a lucrative account. But yeah, you know, you definitely have to educate the client about what you're doing and how far you're going to go. If a client can feel that they've learned something from you, chances are that's a client that's going to basically value you quite highly and pay you accordingly.
Okay. I think last one from me before, you have a question?
The question is, how do you deal with the me time? Creatives, we're mostly busy working, that we forget that we're human beings as well. We have lives and families.
Yeah.
How do you get to deal with that?
Yeah, that's another lesson that I learned. That I learned quite harshly. I mean, there are times when we'll be working until midnight, 2, 3 in the morning, but you soon realize, look, if you don't refill the cup, you eventually have nothing to pour out of it. Right? It's very, very important. As creatives, I think we need to focus on quality more than quantity. I would suggest or recommend rather that you aim at, say for example, if you currently do 6 jobs a month to get, as an example, to get 10 pin, or 6 jobs a week, or whatever it is. Try and half that, but to balance out to get the same amount of money. Me time and basically taking time out and being in a sane, calm, focused, together mind space, I can't overemphasize that. The quality of the work that you do as a creative is going to very heavily rely on your state of mind. And sadly, a lot of us would sort of, burn the midnight oil for days on end. But quite frankly, there's going to be a direct correlation between that and the quality of your work. You see it very, very quickly. But also, I very strongly recommend travel. That's another thing that we don't do. We need to do a lot more of that. It's a big world outside Zambia. It's a big, big world. You can literally get on a bus and go to Zanzibar and just soak up some inspiration, or Malawi, or Mozambique. But I think it's very, very important to be able to get yourself out of that scenario and feel different things and see different things, and then that's what you're going to bring to the table. I mean, if you're involved in anything that involves creativity or creating something that is new, it's very paramount that you understand that your mind is basically your most important asset. And so therefore, feeding the mind the same way you feed our body with food, feeding the mind with inspiration, with fun, and with as much variety as possible, expands it. And it brings a different dimension. So those that know me will know that no matter how broke I am, if I'll get on a bus at least just once a year, do like a holiday, But it's very, 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 I can't stress how important that is. Yeah, 100%. And the money is not worth it. You can sacrifice the money for a holiday, but yeah. Yes.
So I know he spoke about cartels and the whole thing of the same people getting the jobs.
Yeah.
I wanted to find out, is a good idea good enough for a small agency to be successful? Because we've come to find in Zambia now, it's almost like you see the same agencies with the big accounts.
Yeah.
It's the same thing all the time. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give a small agency? Because you can have a great idea, you can have great concepts, great creative, but how do you get this? You need to build stronger relationships away from the creative. What advice would you give a startup?
Sure. I think the first thing is we have to find a way of varying our propositions. Everybody is going, if you speak to any marketing manager in any decent sized organization, they'll tell you that everybody is going to them with literally the same pitch. I can do some advertising for you, I can market your products, or I can do, if you change the script, change the script, try and find a different way to create value. A lot of these companies are basically operating in territories with a lot of competition. And it's in understanding the environment that the company finds itself in that you can basically differentiate yourself from anybody who's pitching towards the same company. Now, what's also happening is that a lot of these agencies are basically pitching at global level. So, for example, if you're part of a global or regional based company, they'll go to the head office somewhere, and the instructions will sort of trickle down. So they want the local office probably won't even have much leeway to decide which agency to go with. But if you're going to go down that route, you then have to, if you're going to go down the route sort of pitching to these local agencies, they then have to justify why they need to come down to you as a company. Now, a lot of these startup companies have limited resources, rightly so, because number one, it's a chicken and egg situation. If you got, say, a multi-choice gig or a big campaign, you'd have to hire people specifically to service that account. But at the same time, as you are pitching, for you to get that job, they almost want to see you with a big team. And so it's just like, where do you win? My go-to place would be to focus on specific one-off projects that can create value. A lot of these companies do have contingency marketing budget for special promotions and activations. I think it's only once you start, the best way to build a relationship, I used to think that it was taking clients out for drinks and stuff. It also works. It also works, but the best is to create value. If you can find a gap in what they're doing and then position yourself to be the one that fills in that gap in addition to what the agency is doing. And again, it's coming in with that collaborative mindset. Your ad agency is doing a great job, but I think they're missing the gap here. But a lot of times it's like, no, we can do a better job than your agency, and we are going to come in guns blazing. We are the better guys. We're going to do it. Yeah, we're going to do it cheaper because you're, and you know, you're never going to, if there's a weak, if I don't know of a weaker argument than that. Sorry, my leg is cramping. I don't know of a weaker argument than that of saying that we're going to come in and we're going to save you money. No company is looking to save money in marketing. That's very important for you guys to understand. There's not a single company that is actually looking to save marketing costs. They're looking to make more money. And if they have to spend money in order to make more money, they will. The problem is in you being able to basically convince them to spend more. I don't know if I've answered that question.
I think the final one from me.
Sure.
Anyway, speaking to what you were talking about, answering his question, I think that makes sense. Too many times you go to the client and say, these guys are doing it for 5 pin. I can do it for like 750.
Yeah.
You know, in the end, you are also underselling yourself.
Yes. We should be saying these guys are doing it for 5 pin. I want to go in there and I want to do it for 10 pin.
Exactly.
You know, because I'm gonna add more value to that. Absolutely. That should be the way the approach. 100%.
Actually, saw a poster in a creative director's office, and it said you can only have 2 things, and then there was a list of 3 things. It said fast, good, and cheap.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
you can only pick 2.
That's right. That's right.
So it either has to be fast and cheap.
Yes.
Good and fast. Cheap and good. So you only pick 2.
Absolutely. No, it's spot on.
Yeah.
It's spot on. There's always a compromise.
Yeah.
There's always a compromise. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'll leave off with this question. Inspiration. How I have to close up. He's still here. You get to talk to him. Inspiration. How does that work for you? For me, because I'm desk based, so it's this is a nice image. Save.
Yes.
This is a nice image. Save.
Yes.
Like how does it work for you besides from traveling?
Yeah, no, of course. So what I've done and what I did quite early on is say my Facebook. And I know, even as I say this, I know there's somebody there I was going to go like, oh, no wonder you never comment on my post. But I literally don't follow anybody in terms of people and even the little pages that I like, etc. But I have specific profiles of pages that I follow. And literally, when from the early in the morning when I go onto it, there's this one called Architecture and Design. It is just fantastic. From at any point, the first thing I do in the morning when I go up there and I'm checking my social media profiles or my messages, my emails, etc. There's just always something that is of great beauty or great design. And for me, there's no difference between a well-crafted documentary or TV advert or print advert and a well-designed house. I think design is the same language. It's a whole language of aesthetics and beauty and harmonizing with the environment around it. So for me, those things basically keep me going. But yes, I do have to spend quite a bit of time in terms of looking at what the trends are out there. I mean, you have to be able to keep abreast at the technologies that are there, what other people are doing in other places, and that has to be with the view of how can I do things better. But at the same time, I think general day-to-day activities can also provide great inspiration. I mean, even if you look at some of the greatest inventions in life, they all seem like they were just flukes, No, this guy was drinking tea and then he came up with the elevator. You know what I'm saying? You get that. You do get that, No, this guy observed the bee and suddenly he came up with the helicopter. There are all of these sort of things, and if you look through it, so it's in finding the marvel in small day-to-day things that you can really create. Because if you're going to call yourself a creative, without being too spiritual, it basically means that you are aspiring to a higher level. Because in whatever language, whatever Zambian language actually challenge you, see what they call God, and in most cases it is the creator. So there's no one more creative than the guy who is supposedly made sort of heaven, earth, and everything in between, right? So when you see it as a higher calling, it basically means that you can find the same creative spirit in pretty much everything. The landscape, the trees, the cows, the dogs, the donkeys. There's always inspiration. The Caponias, those guys are creative as hell. I mean, you've got to watch, just observe those guys and how they work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just something that you can pick from just about anything. I don't think there's any one formula that, for you to get inspiration. But as long as, I think that the starting point really is just with, finding what it is that you love and doing what you love, And I would imagine that a lot of us are still creatives and pursuing creative excellence because it is what drives our passion. The same gentleman who's standing behind me here, he's actually an engineer or stroke surveyor, and he's there with the camera. There's another guy there. Lopali, what did you do?
Public admin.
He's got a degree in public admin from Mwanza, but that guy is a badass designer and animator. That's the sort of industry that you find yourself in. I mean, in most cases, you stumble upon it, but when you follow that which resonates with you and that which you love, I think there's no failure. There's only school fees. That's what I can say.
Last one. Top skills for creatives now going forward. What is it? Writing copy? Is it designing?
No.
Is it video?
No.
What
Confidence.
should it be?
Confidence, absolutely. When you're in the business of selling ideas, the only difference, the one thing that creates value or that makes the distinction between a 5,000 kwacha idea and a 2 kwacha idea is confidence. That's literally all it is. That's all it is. Don't go and start learning what a lot of like now we're so lucky to have these tutorials online. You can learn any software provided you apply yourself. What we really need to work on as creatives is to be able to say, yes, you told me to do a billboard, but I've put a picture of a fork and a carrot on the billboard and put your logo there, and I'm standing to it. This is my work, and this is what will work. And yes, you can call me a fool, but I'm sticking with it. When we can get to that level of confidence.
No, I think you need confidence. Even to just use the slogan, our chicks have the best thighs.
Yes.
I can imagine that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we did have a few phone calls.
Yeah.
I mean, we did this campaign that really got us in trouble, and I just want to share this, I think, as we close. So there was this company called Ufuk. Yeah, they were out in Leopards Hill Road. Now it was spelled UFUK. Now Ufuk, it was run by these Ukrainians, these guys from Ukraine, and in Ukraine it means horizon, because they used to do paving bricks, So we did this campaign where we brought the bricks in our studio and we put a girl there making facial expressions of orgasm, and the tagline was "Get it laid by the best," and that was a very successful campaign on numerous levels. I mean, we had actually planned to do a social media campaign, but I think within a week, because we started off with some radio ads and I think we did a couple of billboards and then some newspaper adverts. But before we even started the Facebook campaign, people generally started taking photos of those and posting it up there. And it was all fun and good until we got a call from the then Vice President, Mr. Guy Scott, and it wasn't funny anymore. Long and short of it, the company rebranded to Boss for Us. So there you go. But they got a lot of traction and some good sales from that campaign. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we've come to the end of what we like to call the formal part. John will still be around for a few minutes, so if you want to get his number or talk to him or anything like that, he's still here. But I think for me the biggest takeaway has been confidence as creatives. That's definitely a skill we are all lacking, because we tend to bend to the will of the client, even when we know but this is wrong artwork. But then it's like, okay, yeah, they're paying me, so yeah. So confidence as creatives. Something else is pricing as well. We've been underpricing ourselves for far too long.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to change. And also, someone please make a creative council. Too many of us working in our small corners.
Collaboration.
Yeah, so we definitely need to collaborate more. And that's the end of the formal say. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, John, for sharing.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you to Loliwe for organizing.
Yeah, thanks Loliwe. It's been a pleasure. Have you cut?